Hello everybody, I'm Rusty. I want to welcome you to Island Breeze Tropicals. So today we're going to be asking the question, why did my bromeliad rot? So you know what, the sun is shining, the island breeze is blowing. It's time that you and I got growing. Come on, let's have some fun. And why don't we take a look at a rotting bromeliad? So before we get going, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. It's great to have you with us. If you like what you see, do me a favor, hit that like button down there. And why don't you become a member of our Bromeliad family and become a subscriber? Thanks a lot. Now let's get to today's video. Well guys, you know, if you've been growing bromeliads for a long time, every once in a while you will have a beautiful neoregelia like this grows red tiger, and it will be just as perfect as it can be. And then one day you go and you're weeding or you're pulling some dead senescent leaves off of the base of your plant, and when you give it a tug, this happens. Well, that's not good. Take a look. It rotted at the base. So how come? And what can we do, hopefully, to prevent it from happening again? Okay, so why does our bromeliad rot? Well, the main reason is that our bromeliads are called herbaceous perennials, fancy term for a non-woody plant. Now, why does that make a difference? Well, if you have an oak tree, for instance, what we see as being bark is really like a skin on your oak tree, and what that does is it prevents microorganisms from getting into the living part of your tree. So it's a barrier against microorganisms. Guess what? These plants don't have it. So your bromeliads are non-woody plants, which means that they don't have any protection against microorganisms. Okay, so you can see the base of this neoregelia, and I'm going to turn it around like this, and you can see right in here it just rotted. Look at that. Now you'll be able to feel it. And this area right in here is wet and mushy, and that is what rot is all about in your bromeliad. So if you take a look at where that poor bromeliad came out of, take a look at this area right in here, and you can see, let's get my big finger out of the way, and you can see that it rotted off where? Right down there at the line of the substrate. So when it rots right down there at the soil line, guess what guys? That's a dead giveaway as to why this happened. So when it comes to your bromeliad rotting, it's due to a couple of things, but it all starts with water and your potting mix. Now, I've always loved to say water doesn't rot anything, and it kind of doesn't, but remember, if your plant does get inundated with water, like in a flood, well, yep, they don't like anaerobic conditions and they will rot because of that. But what we're talking about here is not the water itself rotting your plant. What we're talking about is the water creating an anaerobic condition that microorganisms love. Now, there are fungal organisms. One is called Phytophthora. There's Pythium. They love anaerobic conditions. And guess what? They're everywhere. They're in your potting mix. They're in your garden soil. You can't get away from them. So if you have an anaerobic condition, that's where they love to thrive, and they will move into your plant, and basically, you know what they're doing? They're eating it. And that's why you see this. So it's the microorganisms eating your plant that cause the rot. So how come we have anaerobic conditions? Well, it's pretty simple. It's because what's in the pot has turned anaerobic. Now remember, our potting soils are going to be organic. I hope you're using organic potting soil. And it breaks down from time to time. It's something that's going to happen no matter what we do. And you know, it can sneak up on you. So this is where the problem is going to be. The problem is going to be because your potting mix does not drain. It is broken down because it's organic, and that allows those anaerobic conditions to be around the base of your plant. So it's a pretty simple fix. I'm going to show you what you should use. Okay, so we're still talking about prevention, and we're talking about repotting some of your plants that you have in your collection if the substrate gets to be too wet. And that's, again, is because the substrate has a tendency to break down. So how do you know? Well, I gotta tell you guys, there's only a couple ways, and that's you go through the collection and take your finger and stick down in the pot. Number one, it's not going to give when your finger goes in there because all of the particles have broken down and now they're compact, and that's what stops your potting mix from draining. All of the organic material has broken down and the particles have gotten smaller and they get scrooched up together and they don't allow water to flow through down out of your pot. Now, there is a way that you can do it without taking your finger in every bromeliad that you have, and you can use an ordinary, there we go, now I got it in the frame, you can use an ordinary moisture meter. Now these are not expensive, and because they're not what I would call a really precision instrument, but these will do the job. So it's got a small little probe, you can stick it down in your pot. And again, it's not precision, but it will tell you dry, moist, or wet. And if it's wet, pull your plant aside and then repot it. So this is more preventative than anything else, but what you want to do is you want to use some brand new fresh potting mix. So we have a video on potting mixes. I suggest you look at it. And I'm not going to go into all the different aggregates that you can use, but I am going to show you one and show you the difference between what was in that pot and what you are going to be repotting your bromeliads into. Okay, so this shows, I think, a really good comparison of what we want and what we don't want when it comes to our potting mix that our bromeliads are planted in. So this is where that poor Neoregelia gross red tiger came out of. You can see that's where it rotted right here. And watch my finger, watch this. I'm pressing this down in there just about as hard as I can go, and it made no dent in it at all. Well, what does that mean? It means that all of this mix had started to decompose and it got closer together and the particles would not allow water to drain through. So you come over to this mix right here. Now, yes, this is brand new and this is what you want. And you can see that there are different sizes of aggregate. Those are the particles that are in your potting soil. And this is not the only potting soil that you can use for your bromeliads. This is just a representation. I'm going to see if I can get this closer into the frame. Hope it doesn't blur. And you can see all of the different sizes of aggregate, the particles that are in this potting soil, and that's what you look for. And watch my finger, look at that. So that's what you want. You want a potting soil to be freely draining, and it will save you the heartache of having this. Okay, so we've covered prevention And that's something that we should all do from time to time in our bromeliad collection to find out whether or not our substrate in our pots has started to decompose and will not drain. So what do we do about this poor thing that has already rotted? Well, in some cases they can be replanted. So why don't we take a look and see whether or not that's going to be the case. So can this bromeliad be saved? Well, what we're going to do is take a look and find out exactly where the rot is. And I'm going to bring it right around here, and you can see maybe right here, there's a pup right there. So I'm thinking that the meristem, which is the growing point of the plant, where the leaves come out of, and also where pups are going to come out of, is still intact. So what you do is you start peeling away any tissue, any old leaves that may inhibit the drying of this plant, all off of here. And you can see that this is now a little better cleaned up. But this is still very, very wet right in here. See this? So this area is still very, very wet. So before you try to replant this, what I would recommend is that you let all of this area thoroughly dry out. Now here's the good news. You don't have to leave your plant laying on its side. You can still maintain its health, and I'll show you how that's done. So you want your plant to dry down there where the rot occurred, and you also don't want to starve your plant from water. So what do? Don't replant it until it has thoroughly dried, and then you'll be sure that the rot will not reoccur. And then all you do is just take a small pot like this. Don't put anything in the pot, but it is going to have to hold the bromeliad upright so that you can pour a little bit of water into the cup, but you don't want the base of your plant to be right down here, because then it's not going to dry. And where I don't like terracotta pots for planting things, if you want to keep something dry, use a small terracotta pot so that it holds the bromeliad rosette and holds the base above the bottom of the pot, and just check it from time to time. Now you can pour water in here, and I'm not going to do that, but you can pour water in there, but don't overfill it, because you also don't want any extra water to trickle down through the leaf axils and keep the base of your plant wet. You want it to dry. Okay, so once you get it to dry, then what do? Well, let's take a look. So, yep, you can replant your bromeliad if the rot hasn't gone all the way up to the meristem. That's important. You're just going to have to play around with it. You know that's my favorite saying, but there are no absolutes. But let's say that your plant can be repotted, and really it's not rocket science, but what you have to do is you have to be kind of careful and not bury your plant. Now again, it has to be dry around the area that had rotted, and it's really difficult to show you guys, but do not bury your plant. So what you're going to probably have to do is stake your plant, because you don't want it that far into your potting mix, because you don't want the rot to happen again. So it's really, really easy, but just put some stakes in here. But it's really easy, and if you stake your bromeliad, just 3 stakes around it, it'll keep it from flopping over, and you'll be able to maintain water in the cup. So you want to plant your bromeliad again, but you cannot bury it. So it has to be done a little bit different than your other ones, and I hope you can see in here that I did not bury that plant in there. Again, because you want roots to come out of the base of the plant. And one more time, guys, there's not much there to work with. So you just go down a little bit, make an indentation. And then what you do to make sure that your plant does not topple over, there we go. You take some ordinary stakes like these, and then you put them in here. All you have to do is triangulate it a little bit, and you need to keep your bromeliad upright. And once you do that, then it will stand up on its own, and you can water it just like that, and your plant will do just fine. So anyway, guys, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed learning about rot in your bromeliads, and maybe we learned how to prevent it. You know, it happens to everybody, but with the proper soil mix in general, your plants are going to grow just fine. So no matter where you are, I hope your sun is shining. I hope you have an island breeze blowing. I know that you and I need to keep growing and have lots of fun. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.